So welcome everybody. We are very pleased to be here with you today for this final webinar of the ULaaDS project. We are at the very end of our ULaaDS journey. We started in September 2020 and the project is finishing tomorrow. So we really are happy to be with you today and share some of our final outputs that we have been working on. My name is Arianna Merico. I am a project and forum coordinator at EuroCities, one of the partners in the ULaaDS consortium. And I will give you now a very, very brief introduction to ULaaDS. We will have a look at the agenda and then we will start with the webinar itself. So for those of you that don't know ULaaDS yet and have maybe this is the first time that you see one of our events or webinar, ULaaDS stands for Urban Logistics as an On-Demand Service. And for the past years, we have been working to foster sustainable and livable city through the deployment of innovative, shared zero-emission logistics while dealing with the impacts of the on-demand economy. For today, what we want to show you is a series of outputs of the project. So we will have a look at the ULaaDS replication booklet. This is a publication that EuroCities has prepared with insights into the various ULaaDS solutions that have been tested in three European cities, our lighthouse cities. And we will look at how this solution could be replicated in other European cities using the experiences of our satellite cities. Then with my colleague Lorena from Bax and Company, we will have a look at a publication that and a study that Bax together with the city of Groningen and the University of Groningen have worked on, that is all about finding the right location and the right space for parcel lockers and building a policy framework for parcel locker systems. Moving on, unfortunately, Philip will not be able to be with us today, so I will replace him in the presentation, and I will give you an overview of another important output of the project, which is the ULaaDS Decision Support Toolbox, which is an interactive tool that will let you look at the impacts of each of the solutions that we have tested in ULaaDS and look at how they could be useful for some of your measures or some of your plans in your cities. And finally, together with Maike from the University of Groningen, we will have an interactive exercise. So be ready to get your hands dirty with us because we will look at how to plan for the uncertainties in the urban logistic world, how to future-proof urban logistics, and Maike will tell you all about that later on today. So I hope you're ready. We have around 25 people at the moment, so hopefully a few more will join, but I will kick off with the presentation. So the ULaaDS replication journey, this was very important for us in ULaaDS, and I would say in EuroCities, this is one of our main pillar, working on capacity building and replication for cities and with cities. So in the framework of ULaaDS, we had 3 lighthouse cities, Bremen, Mechelen, and Groningen. These were the cities where we tested the solutions. And we had 4 satellite cities, Rome, Alba Iulia, Bergen, and Edinburgh, that basically joined all the activities that we did in terms of replication in the project, and had an in-depth look at what the lighthouse cities were doing, and they are now preparing for replicating some of these measures. I will now give you a quick overview of the trials. I will not spend too much time on this, but I want you to get an idea of what was tested in each of the cities, and then we will have a look at the replication booklet itself. So we will start with Bremen, which is also the project coordinator of ULaaDS. And in Bremen, they did 2 physical trial and 1, let's say, virtual trial, 1 simulation. I will focus on the physical trial. The first one was on containerized consolidated last mile delivery. The objective was to use some micro hubs in the cities to test possible last mile delivery with heavy cargo bikes. And what we did in Bremen was to install these containerized micro hubs that you see in the picture on the left side. So these were placed, 2 of them on a public ground and 1 of them in a parking space that was rented by the city. And we had trucks delivering their shipment to this area, and then with a cargo bike, heavy cargo was placed on the cargo bike, and the last mile delivery was performed. The second trial in Bremen focused on private cargo bike logistics, so a shared cargo bike system for citizens that could rent these cargo bikes for micro logistics. So, for example, a trip to IKEA, instead of using the car, they would rent the cargo bike for a few days, and they could test the system, see how the cargo bike worked for them, and then return it. Moving on to Groningen, Groningen tested the 2 trials as well. The first one focused on placing some logistics operation in a park and ride facility, in a park and ride zone. And the idea was to have the commuters pick up or drop their packages at these parcel lockers in this park and ride facility. And it was the idea to place the parcel locker and also have a cargo bike rental place. I will not say too much about this because this will be the whole focus of the presentation from Lorena, so I will not spoil the fun, but just to know that in ULaaDS we have a lot of experience now on parcel lockers, so we will get back to that. And the second trial in Groningen was about sharing vehicles among local shopkeepers. So the city of Groningen collaborated with the Groningen City Club, that is a group of shopkeepers in the cities, and they assessed which type of vehicles would be most useful for them, and we procured an electric van, some cargo bikes, and another light electric vehicle for delivery, and these vehicles were then shared among the shopkeepers that could book them through an online platform. This was one of the most successful trials in ULaaDS. And then moving on to Mechelen, they also had 2 trials. One attempted to have a collaboration between 2 major logistics service providers, UPS and bpost, and have Eco Couriers, which is a local cargo bike company that does deliveries and pickups, to basically have Eco Couriers make the pickups and then have these parcels consolidated and delivered sorry, I'm missing the word, shared in the consolidation center of UPS and bpost. We had a lot of lessons learned from this trial, including the fact that consolidation remains one of the main challenges, and we will get more into the lessons learned when we have a look at the replication booklet. And last but not least, the second trial in Mechelen looked at an autonomous vehicle that had inside the vehicle capacity for both passengers and parcels. So we installed a parcel locker inside the autonomous vehicles, and the autonomous vehicle was going through the route that you see on the screen in a business park, and it was bringing along both the passengers and the people. So this was a very, very fast overview of the trials. But what we want to focus on today is the replication potential, and what could you learn, or what could your city or your company learn about the trials that we implemented. So in ULaaDS, as I mentioned, replication was extremely important. So we had a series of activities to ensure that the solutions that we were testing throughout the course of ULaaDS could be scaled up and spread around Europe. We started with a replication training. We had several webinars, technical webinar, replication webinar. We had 3 peer learning visits in the lighthouse cities, where participants both from the satellite cities and from the follower cities could join, and a series of peer learning webinars. And these all culminated with the development of what we call the implementation roadmap for satellite cities, which it's again a very valuable deliverable if you want to learn more about each of the trial, each of the lesson learned developed by the cities, and what the satellite cities are looking at replicating. So I already mentioned this, but this is just to give you a feeling of us meeting and sharing with others. So we had 2 study visits in 2022 in Mechelen and Groningen, and 1 in March last year in Bremen. During all these activities, the satellite cities joined, and we also selected 10 follower cities that came along the replication journey. So the satellite cities in ULaaDS, they through this whole process, they looked at what the lighthouse cities were doing, and they have assessed which measure have, in their opinion, the highest replication potential. So on this slide, you can have a brief overview of what each of our satellite cities is looking at replicating. What we mean with replication is obviously not just a copy-paste of the measure or the solution. There is a degree of adaptability, and each city has its own geographical scope and landscape and different type of stakeholders. And so there is obviously the measure need to be looked at and adapted for each city context, but this is the overview of what our satellite cities would like to replicate in the future. And with this, I will give the floor to my colleague Marion, that has worked together with me in the development of this replication booklet that we have been talking about. So Marion, you can, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and you can show everybody how our replication booklet look like.
Okay, hello everyone. So I will share my screen. The suspense is really high. We're happy to present you with the ULaaDS replication booklet, but I think you can see the presentation now. So yeah, replication booklet, it's derives from the implementation roadmap. It's an easy to read booklet, really accessible, targeted to city practitioners, policymakers, and urban logistics stakeholders. And so it's a really easy to read and easy to navigate booklet. So you have the first page is the imprint and the table of content to navigate through the booklet. Then you have brief presentations of the cities, of the lighthouse cities, and the trials that they that they implemented, and with a brief summary of the objectives of each of the trials. And you can have a pen, you can navigate and go to each of the lighthouse cities. So for example, now we can go to the first one, which is Bremen. And so there is a brief summary of the trial, but most importantly, a focus on the lesson learned from the trial, which is, of course, what is very useful for replication in the project. So we have Bremen, we have Mechelen, and then we have Groningen. In each of these three double page, you have the summary of the trial, the lesson learned. Then, as Ariana presented, we put also in the booklet the timeline and all the steps in the replication program of ULaaDS. And then we go to each of the satellite city. So we start with Alba Iulia, and so of course they replicated more than one solution, but we decided to focus. We picked one measure that we thought was the most ready for replication, and we zoomed on it. So you have a brief summary of what the satellite city wants to replicate, and then you have the action plan with the timeline on the right side of the screen, and a quote from the people involved in the replication program on why this specific solution is interesting to replicate. And you can also have access to a brief overview of the project or of projects related to the replicated solutions. So for example, Alba Iulia, we decided to focus on the parcel lockers sharing scheme. For Bergen, on shared mobility services. Edinburgh, we focused on the replication of low emission zones. And Rome, we focused on the containerized urban last mile delivery. So you also have same summary and the timeline with a quote. And then you have access also in the last page of the booklet. You can check the full implementation roadmaps with a lot more details on each of the solutions replicated, a lot more details on the methodology, as Ariana mentioned. And I think that's it for the presentation of the booklet. Ariana will give you the full link so you can access it and also disseminate it widely. We hope you like the design and organization of the booklet.
Thanks a lot, Marion. Maybe if you can go back to one of the pages, and I would like to ask the participants if there are any questions or any comments on this deliverable. I will put the link in the chat. And we are very excited to share this with you, and we hope that it's going to provide some inspiration. As Marion said, the implementation roadmap that you see also linked in this page is a much more in-depth overview, both of the trials that I very quickly skimmed through today, and the lessons learned from the lighthouse cities, and also there is the full transferability potential assessment for the measures that each of the lighthouse cities is looking at replicating. So if you want more information compared to what is in the booklet itself, the implementation roadmap is the place to go. Okay, I see there are no questions, so I will start sharing the presentation again, and we can move on to Lorena and the parcel locker. So the presentation is uploading. We will make the slides and the recording available on the ULaaDS website after this webinar, just in case you want to go back and look at some specific parts. Sorry, the presentation is a bit slow in uploading. And obviously, if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat. Okay, now it's up and running. So I just had one final slide with the QR code, but I put the link to the replication booklet also in the chat. So Lorena, over to you. And yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Ariana. Hi, everyone. My name is Lorena Axinte. I'm a senior mobility consultant at Becht & Company, and we've been involved in ULaaDS from the beginning until the very end, which is actually tomorrow. So I'll be giving you a short presentation for how we have worked together with the City of Groningen and the University of Groningen, as Ariana was mentioning, to find the right space for parcel lockers. So the idea in Groningen was to, let's say, complement or create an integrated approach for transport and complement a park and ride facility that they already had with some logistics services. This is located at the outskirts of the city, and it was meant to develop an attractive service for commuters, but also to make logistics more sustainable, reducing and replacing driven kilometers. Of course, this was the initial plan, but the city realized quite quickly that I think another user took control, but it's okay. So the city realized quite quickly that there were different permit agreements and let's say regulatory aspects that they needed to have in place before being able to allow any parcel lockers to be located in public spaces, and that's mostly because the pressure on public space is growing in Groningen, just like in most other cities in Europe. For land use, there are very strict rules, so they needed a policy framework that could make sure that the approach can be replicated, so they don't have to do it every single time logistics operator would want to have a parcel locker in Groningen. Last but not least, there were certain issues with the electricity connection. So in general, for any implementation in public space, there is a long waiting period. That meant that for quite some time, the trial in Groningen looked like this. So the parcel locker was not placed in the park and ride facility, and this led to a different approach in which the city recognized the need to have a framework that could maybe offer a long-term solution for the entire city, so not just for the park and ride. In this sense, the idea was to establish the vision, the rules, and the results that seeding public space to parcel locker services could have, provide parcel lockers as a universally accessible service. That meant that most inhabitants of Groningen could access them, and also overcome the lack of easily replicable models from other cities and countries. And I'll talk a bit more about this in a second. So what we did was to work together. The city of Groningen led stakeholder forum that included some of the biggest parcel locker providers from the Netherlands, so PostNL, DHL, De Buren, and also had interdepartmental discussions, which in the beginning didn't seem as a priority, given that we're talking about logistics, but they soon realized that placing these lockers on public space would require other departments' approval. The University of Groningen was also involved, facilitating the stakeholder fora, but also conducting research on the carbon emission impact of out-of-home deliveries. So now we know an approximate distance that people are willing to walk to reach these parcel lockers, and we also know, let's say, what it means if people actually choose to drive to pick up their parcels when these are placed in parcel lockers. From our side, we took care of benchmarking practices for parcel lockers from around the world And we also conducted spatial analysis that helped the city identify some of the best locations for parcel lockers that could be accessible to as many people as possible. I will be focusing on these two aspects right now, starting with the benchmarking. So I will share with you the link after the presentation, but this is the summary of our findings. I was mentioning that there aren't that many examples across the world, so I think we have all seen parcel lockers in our cities. We have maybe even used them. What we realized pretty soon is that there isn't a unified approach to how cities or even countries allow them to be implemented. And the most we could find were examples from 5 different countries on how they have developed either guidelines or recommendations for installing parcel lockers. So we have looked at these and we saw that there were some common themes across them. One of them related to the overall regulation approach. So some of the cities or national authorities were proactively introducing rules and regulations for parcel lockers. That is also the case for Groningen. But then there are others that are rather reactive in introducing such regulations and prefer to deal with issues if they come up. In terms of business models, there are generally 2. One of them is an open business model where different logistics service providers can use white label parcel locker. This white label notion is quite contentious, but just for you to get an idea. And then, of course, there are the private networks where generally only one service provider can deposit the parcels. Locations varied between public space, private space, and then semi-private spaces. In terms of infrastructure requirements, I already mentioned electricity connections, but there are also parcel lockers that can be battery powered. Accessibility, and I will share also a visual. For instance, we have seen good examples for designing parcel lockers which are accessible also for wheelchair users, and that refers both to allowing enough space for maneuvering the wheelchair, but also accessing the digital screen and the parcels, depending on when they are located. And last but not least, data reporting, because we know that cities are really lacking enough information on what goes on in their cities in terms of logistics. So some recommendations refer to establishing data agreements with the parcel locker providers. The other visual that you can see is also a nice example of how parcel lockers can be integrated in public space. So they're not just, let's say, pink or yellow boxes around the city, but they can, for instance, serve as a way of protecting the bike path. After doing the benchmarking, we developed the spatial analysis, and the aim was to find the best spots for locating parcel lockers in the city of Groningen. But to do this, we had to first understand the city context. So we looked at the demand, where basically where do most people live, to know where most parcels would be would need to be delivered to. In the visual, you can see the darker blue are the areas with the highest population density, and then the lighter blue are the ones which are sparsely populated. So we assume that most of the demand will come from the darker blue area. Then we looked at the infrastructure, because as I was saying, we do want people to walk and cycle when they go to pick up their parcels from parcel lockers. Otherwise, there is no benefit in terms of CO2 emissions from this solution. And here we did an analysis that showed the networks, both for walking and cycling, that are most likely to be used because they're that are connected. So again, dark red shows the ones that will probably be used. And this is just the density of the network. Then, because we know that the city of Groningen wants to have this integrated approach, we also took into account the locations that the city would prefer to have to provide both mobility services and logistics services. So as the city was also developing a strategy for mobility hubs, we considered these 20-something mobility hubs that they had already decided to place around the city. And so taking into account all these different points that I mentioned before, we tried to identify the most accessible 10 spots for parcel lockers, and this is how they would be distributed across the city. And you can see in 5, 10, and 15 minutes the way they could be accessible for cycling in this case. We did the same for walking, but I'm only showing you the cycling coverage. However, what we realized pretty soon is that, of course, these would be parcel lockers located in public spaces, but the private logistics service providers already have parcel lockers across the city. So it made sense to look at where these are located and try to actually fill the gaps in the existing private networks. So here you can see in orange the map of PostNL, and then in yellow the map of DHL, and the way their networks are currently covering the city for cycling. So that's 5, 10, and 15 minute cycling. And you can see that they're actually pretty well developed. So there aren't many high density areas that they haven't covered. But when we look at walking, the situation is quite different. So for pedestrians, the areas are much more restricted. This is why what we did in the end was to superpose all the different elements that I had mentioned before, and basically identify the 3 priority locations that the city could choose when they were to award the locations for parcel lockers in public spaces. And so with this, what happened is that the city developed, let's say, the overall policy framework that they submitted to the City Council for adoption in December. The agreement will be to have 1 parcel locker operator, and they would want 3 companies to make an offer for this, and they would be allowed to have between 10 and 20 parcel lockers in public spaces for about 5 years. From our side, we enjoyed this exercise a lot because it was done in collaboration with the city and the university, and it led to very tangible results. So what we would like to do now is to have feedback on the methodology and the approach, and also see if this is replicable in other cities, but also for other types of logistics developments and maybe other accessibility topics too, because we think the question of where to locate different services across the city is probably relevant in more aspects related to mobility and logistics. And that's it. Very happy to answer any questions. And also, if you'd like to get in touch with myself and my colleague Victor, who worked on the spatial analysis, please do so.
Thank you very much, Lorena.
You can take over, Ariana.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Lorena, or any expression of interest in getting your city mapped? You don't have to answer now, obviously, but I think it was a very important step and a very successful endeavor in ULaaDS. So have a look at it. Have a look at the. It's also linked in the replication booklet, the parcel locker system study. So have a look at it and let the colleagues at BAX know if you have any questions. Okay, So now I have a difficult role because I am taking the role of EML Fraunhofer to present their ULaaDS support toolbox. Unfortunately, Philip, that was supposed to present, got sick, so he is not with us today. I will do my best, but I'm not an expert on this topic, so please be kind. But so the support toolbox was developed originally starting from a questionnaire that looked at the purpose of why to do a support toolbox, and basically the respondent said that this area would be the most interesting for them to be covered. So what are the ecological impact and the traffic impacts of urban logistic measures? And then the one you see in green also scored quite high. So experiences from other projects, potential stakeholders, and opportunities and risk. And all this was then more in-depth elaborated in the full impact assessment deliverable that partners in ULaaDS have developed. So we have two deliverables, one on the economic impact, user experience, user acceptance and willingness to pay and awareness, and one on the logistic impacts on logistic traffic efficiency, land use, and the environment. And basically these two deliverables that you can find scanning the QR code, we will also put the links in the chat. These are the basis of the decision support toolbox, which is an online tool that I am now gonna show you. So just give me a second. I'll stop sharing the presentation and start sharing my screen. So you should now see my screen. This is still in development, so we will share the support toolbox in the coming days, but this is how it looks like, and you can basically click on the various trials and solutions that we have tested in ULaaDS. So you see these are the two from Bremen. Cargo hitching was both in Bremen and in Mechelen, with the simulation in Bremen and autonomous vehicle in Mechelen. And then we have the parcel lockers in Groningen and the shared vehicle platform for logistic in Groningen. And when you click on the different solution, it brings you to this page where you have the description of the trial, some nice picture of how it actually looked like in real life. So this is when the beta version comes in. And then you have here listed what were the initial objectives identified. And when you, sorry, I'm going to reload it because it's, oh, that's not good. Apology for this. I'm going to stop sharing and trying to fix it. It seems that my security has decided that this is not accessible anymore. Lorena, do you have the data to enter in the toolbox backend?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
I'm gonna just quickly email it to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. In the meantime, please, if you have any questions on what we presented so far, also in the previous presentation, please go ahead and let us know. Okay, Lorena, I just sent you the details. Sorry, everybody.
Okay, 1 second, and we should be there. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. So if you just direct me, I will click
Yes,
on.
so you can click on the first trial in Bremen, containerized urban last mile delivery. And so if you scroll down, I was talking about the initial objectives. So these were the objectives that were set by for the trial. So if you click on the first one on reducing the number of polluting vehicles, here, based on the deliverables that I showed you earlier, the colleagues at Fraunhofer have created this mapping of what worked. And if you go to the next objective, Lorena, we can see that there is a full assessment of what went well. So the arrow in green going up, what didn't really work, what was midway through, and so on. So we can have a look also at the last objective. So same here, you have the different analysis, and this is done for all the trials that we tested. And if you go more down, you have the explanation of all this data that is provided with the arrow. So you have more information on why the arrow is going up or going down, and so on, so forth. So if you scroll a bit more, you can see there is a full explanation of how this data was collected. So in this case, it's a questionnaire, and you have all the information that you need to understand if this solution could potentially work for your city. I think there is one question. Thank you for the. We are coordinating a new project. Nice. Thank you, Michael. Great. It would be great to have Sukolog. That's how it's called? Sukolo. Take some of our learnings and take up some of our ULaaDS experiences. Happy to follow up on you with you on that. So I think for now, this is what we can show you in terms of the support toolbox. As I said, we will make it available on our website. We will actually integrate it on our website, and so you will be able to come on our website and have a look for yourself in the coming days. And please follow us, follow our newsletter, and follow us on social media so that you can. Yes, if you sign up to our newsletter, you will get the latest updates and all the deliverables that we have presented today. You can subscribe to the newsletter through the this link that I'm gonna put in the chat right now. Okay, so Lorena, I think you can stop sharing the screen, and I will upload the presentation again for the last part. So we can move on to the interactive part. And while we wait for the presentation to be uploaded, I would like to ask all the 29 people that are with us, especially if you are representing a cities and if you're working in a city administration, to write it in the chat so that we can get an idea of who is in the room, which cities are represented, which other universities or stakeholders are here with us today. And I think. So we have our lighthouse cities, Bremen, Milan, which, hi Veronica, it was one of our follower cities in ULaaDS, Locarno, Munich, Lisbon Energy and Environment Agency, Graz, University of Twente, TU Vienna. Great to see you all here. Okay, I will move to the part where we need to be. And Maike, you can take control.
Yes, thank you very much, Ariana. And hello, everyone. My name is Maike, and I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And also on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Bart Raus and Dr. Paul Plezier, I would like to present to you our outcome as a part of ULaaDS deliverable 6.4 and 6.5. And in comparison to the previous presentations, we're not focusing on solutions that could be implemented, but rather on how to keep urban logistics policy effective in the future. So with further ado, I would like to introduce our research. Let me check if it works. Yes, here we go. Because most of you perhaps are aware of the notion that developing and implementing sustainable urban logistics policy is a rather complex task. This has to do due to the diverse stakeholders that are involved, but also the multiplicity of processes, events, and innovations that are sometimes unpredictable. And due to the connection of urban logistics systems with other systems, for example, the land use system or the other transport system within cities, urban logistics is rather sensitive to unforeseen developments. And by unforeseen developments, we also refer to uncertainties, which is a concept that I will use rather much during this presentation, because that is part of our research. And before I go into that a bit more, we would like to state that in order to keep urban logistics policy making effective over time, it's important to find a balance between setting directions for the future, but also being responsive to these unforeseen developments, or as called uncertainties. So in order to do so, we have performed research, and we research actually a novel framework for strategic decision-making for sums and slopes. And our starting point was researching with 14 different European cities how they would respond to and deal with uncertainties that surround urban logistics. And what we actually found was that policymakers are aware of certain types of uncertainties. In our deliverables 6.1, you could also see a further explanation of all the different types that are there. But it was good to see that policymakers keep an eye on unforeseen developments for most of the categories that are existing. However, we also found that there is a limited availability of resources that they can reach out to respond to these uncertainties. And with limited resources, we mean time, budget, but also personnel. And they're together with a missing approach to actually respond to uncertainties, it becomes rather difficult and hard to plan for the future. So within these last two deliverables, we have actually been focusing on creating a missing approach. that I'm going to present to you today. So what we came up with is a systematic approach of 5 steps that you can see right here. But it's good to mention that this is not a systematic approach that is existing next to the urban logistics SOAP cycle that some of you might know, but it's actually part of the SOAP cycle in itself. So what we came up with was the adaptive SOAP cycle, which is presented here on the slide. As you can see, the 4 phases of the original SOAP cycle are presented in the middle. And then we have linked the 5 steps of our systematic approach to these 4 phases. So we start with raising awareness about the system complexity. The second step is mapping uncertainties. And third to follow is adopting adaptive strategy principles, followed by increasing the robustness of policy measures in the measure planning phase, and in the end, acting responsibly and making adjustments if needed. So we'll continue to go into more depth, presenting each step. And please, if you have any questions, you could put it in the chat or ask afterwards if we have enough time available, I believe. But first, we start with step number 1. So the first step is actually very important because it sets the stage for adaptive action. And it's raising awareness about the system complexity, which enables local policymakers in explaining the connection of urban logistics system with others. This step is in fact the explanation and the basis to explaining why urban logistics is sensitive to changes in, for instance, consumer preferences or new technology opportunities, but also changes in national European legislation and global crises. So it sets the stage for explaining why adaptive action might be needed. And there are 3 methods that you can adopt to do this. The first one is creating a stakeholder network analysis. And on the picture, you see an example of the city of Stockholm, in which you can see the network of actors that are involved, but also how they connected to each other. And the second method that you could use is the creation of a causal loop diagram, in which you see how, or actually visualize how the different elements of that are part of the urban logistics system, or maybe other systems, are connected and influence each other. And then the third one is actually the organization of workshops or city walks or storytelling with stakeholders, because they are standing in the daily life and experiencing urban logistics operations daily. And by interacting with each other and sharing each other knowledge, you can also become more aware of the different elements and connections that are existing in this system. So that's for step 2. Step 1, and we're going to step 2. So here comes the interactive part as well, as Ariana just explained. But before we go into that, I want to explain this step a little bit more, because it exists of 2 stages actually. The first one is that you identify developments that can affect the city and the SUMP. So with this exercise, we can also see and provide different techniques on how to do this, how to become aware of possible developments, foreseen or unforeseen, that could have an effect. But the second stage is actually to become, to have an understanding of what this effect actually means. And to clarify that a bit more, we have prepared a interactive element. So I would like to invite you all to join us on the Miro board, which can be accessed by the link that Ariana just shared in the chat. But I'm not sure if you can also click on the link on the slide. It might also be possible.
Yes, it's possible as well.
Okay. Should I share my screen, or are you going to share your screen, Ariana?
You can share your screen, and I'm gonna go in presenter mode so that the participants see all the same thing?
Yep. All right, let me check. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, so if everything works well, you can now see the Miro board as well on the screen, and you can enter it by clicking on the link.
We have 7 participants in the Miro, and I think now we are all seeing the top part with the title, correct?
Yes, I see it.
Great.
All right. So what we actually have created also within these deliverables is a game that can help you with this second step. And it's called the What If game. And it consists of 2 questions. And we're first going to focus on question 1. So what it does, it presents you with an uncertainty and for this exercise, we have the uncertainty called the inner city moves out. Due to the implementation of a zero-emission zone, shops and other services move their businesses out of the city center to avoid the zero-emission constraints. So this is a development that you can that can occur. And the question is, responding to unforeseen change start with sense making. Which actions would you take to obtain a better understanding of the developments you are confronted with and their potential implications for your policy? So what I would like you to do is write in the post-its some actions that you could take to obtain a better understanding of what this uncertainty means to you. So please, you can just click on the post-it and write something there. And we have already one reaction: speak with local stakeholders. Yes. And I see some others that are working. Right, nice. I see some actions that are actually involving stakeholders. So meet with operators, local transport companies, stakeholders. Discuss the question, whether it's really due to the zero emission zone. Establish a regional forum. Okay, we have 2 more that are writing on the post-it notes. So we have another action that is permanent working tables with stakeholders. Find strategies to make the city center more attractive, maybe not primarily a shopping zone. Yes, so finding other strategies, investigate potential companies who will deliver outside the city center, and speak with stakeholders as for a second time. All right. As not every, I think, there's still someone writing. So in a couple of seconds, we can go back to the slides and we can have a reflection on these actions. Show evidence from other cities. All right.
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the let me quickly check where I can go back to the
The slides?
Yes.
I mean, if you have them open, you okay.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. I am gonna, because now I would need to upload them again, and we saw that takes a bit of time, so I'm just gonna share my screen and do it that way. That's gonna be faster.
Yeah, perfect. It's fine. But I think if you're still in the Miro board, you can see that a lot of the actions that you have put in are connecting to involving stakeholders or other cities, discussions, and meeting up with others, speaking with stakeholders or maybe experts. And these are also connected to one of the four methods that we have actually designed that can be seen now on the slides. So there are four methods that can be used for not only exploring uncertainties, but also creating an understanding. And most of the activities that you have brought it to the Miro are connected, I think, to foresight or either exploring by consultation. So I'm quickly going through the four methods. Because the first one is actually forecasting, which can also be used. This method makes use of historical, but also quantitative data. So think of models or projections that can be used to explore the effects of certain developments. The second is foresight, in which a narrative and qualitative data is used to explore the effects or visions, create visions on what it will do. And this is in an organized manner, so with the help of workshops, roundtables, I think that was also mentioned, focus groups, brainstorm sessions, etc. Then the third one is actually exploring by testing, so the pilots, experiments, some of the things that have been done during the ULaaDS as well. And the last one is exploring by consultation, which looks a bit similar to foresight, but this is really unorganized, informal conversations, so connecting with calling stakeholders or online forum newsletters by sharing possible developments that can come up. So now we go back to the Miro again for the second question of this interactive part.
You can see it on the screen?
It's still, yeah, I can see it in the Teams, but I think we can go by Miro to the other one as well. So the second question is actually focusing, could you think of 2 ways to make your current policy plan ready for dealing with this unforeseen development? So what kind of actions or things would you do to make your current policy plan ready to respond to these unforeseen developments? And you can click on the post-its again and write down some of the actions if you know something. We take a couple of minutes to go to this one. So I see already some actions, for example, expand the zero emission zone, which is an action connected to maybe revise some of the policy measures to adjust it, develop incentive for businesses to stay within the zero emission zone as well, offer shared transport solutions, close contact with authorities to know these developments in time. So keep up to date and keeping an eye on possible uncertainties that might arise. Share the benefits and the results of policy implemented. Very good one. Integrate SOAP decisions in the SUMP policy cycle. Yes. to have this connection better. But I think if I'm having the wrong idea, please let me know. Workshops with stakeholders. Yes. Plan policy implementation enough in advance and share with stakeholders. Right. Contact with research institutes, probably. Yes. And I think the last one is still writing now. Push towards improving real cost instead. Yes. So all of these actions somehow connect to the next 3 steps that I'm actually going to highlight of the adaptive soap cycle that we've seen. So Ariana, if you can go back to the presentation and then to slide 60, yes. All right. So what we have seen, some of your actions are actually coming back, maybe not immediately in this step 3, that is still connected to phase 2 of the soap cycle. But they will probably come back in step 4 or even 5. But first I'm going to pay attention to step 3, which is adopting adaptive strategy principles. And this step is important to enable and prepare urban logistics plans to respond to changing conditions. So it's not really setting any actions or activities in stone. It's rather some principles that you could take up in order to prepare yourself. And the first one, as is already presented in the slides, is visioning for enabling adaptive navigation. And this first principle is mainly to create a future vision for urban logistics within your city, as it can provide orientation for when change happens. And just to explain this, for example, if the zero emission zone is installed and it triggers the relocation of shops, you could take this future vision to see whether such a relocation is desirable or not, and what could be done, or what kind of policy action should be adjusted or in which direction. So this provides guidance when you need to adapt. And then the second one is guiding principles for an open city. This is a next step to the long-term visions that you can create instead of just, so you translate the vision into guiding principles. And this is, for example, that an example of a guiding principle can be that when the area in a city is increasing to a certain urban density, or when the urban density becomes higher than a certain amount, then you create extra pickup points, or you integrate pickup points with existing urban facilities. So it's just a guiding point that if X happens, what can be done in the end. Then the third one, yes, is take small step consistently. And this is just a principle for indicating that when you implement a zero emission zone, you can do this in steps. So when you take, for example, the zero emission zone and start with a awareness campaign, you can already see and reflect upon the responses or actions that are taken as a reaction to this idea, and see how you can tackle these if they are threats, or maybe improve some of the policy measures that are connected to this. The fourth one is experimentation and learning, which is also connected to the process of trial and error to find a way to deal with constructively with uncertainty. So it's experimenting with the policy measure or an innovation, and learning and reflecting upon this implementation to see what kind of policy measures or adjustments are needed in order to get this successfully done. And then the last one is actually something that you have mentioned quite a lot, which is strengthen the resilience by involving stakeholders. And I've touched upon this already in the introduction, step 1 and step 2, that involving stakeholders is a very it can strengthen your resilience. So it's not only an extra motivation to invest in stakeholder involvement, but it's also showing you that structural involvement of stakeholders can help to see when developments come up, but also to talk and see what it means or what can be done to respond to it. So that is step 3. And then we go to step 4. Step 4 is connecting to phase 3 of the SOAP cycle, which is measure planning. So this is the phase in where you design or come up with the measures. And this step is meant to keep the measures effective under changing circumstances. So what we have provided in this step are actually 4 different types of actions that you could take to keep the existing policy measures effective over time. And in order to explain it to you better, there are going to be 2 models in the next slide, because what you can see, or
should I already move, or should I stay in the previous one?
It's fine. Thank you. Because which steps you can take depends on whether the uncertainty, so the development, is a threat or an opportunity, and what the degree of uncertainty is. And that second one is actually presented here in this model, because I can understand that is rather vague. So we created this model to help you determine the level or the degree of uncertainty, because this depends on actually the capacity of local policymakers to leverage uncertainty, which is provided and shown in the upper part of this model. And with the 4 questions that are placed in this part, you can actually determine whether the capacity is high or low. So as a quick example, if you have the opportunity to acquire additional knowledge and skills and means, you have a higher capacity to leverage uncertainty in comparison when you have no opportunity at all to do this. And it depends on the uncertainty of the situation, which is presented in the lower part. And you can read this model in a way that if you have a high capacity to leverage the uncertainty, which you can see in the left upper part, and the situational uncertainty is low, so the lower part of the model, then you are going towards a low degree of uncertainty because you have the capacity to tackle or leverage this uncertainty. The same is correct for the other side. If you have a low capacity to leverage uncertainty, but the uncertainty of the situation is high, then you go to a high degree of uncertainty, and that's how you can determine a bit on which scale you are. And then going to the next slide, you can see how the determination of whether it's an opportunity and what the degree of uncertainty are flows into the steps you can take to tackle or actually increase the robustness of policy measures. And also, due to time, I'm just gonna highlight one of the rows. So the first one, if you go to the 4th column, you see improved air quality, which is the development. So you see that the air quality improved due to the implementation of a zero emission zone. And this, you can see this development as an opportunity. The degree of uncertainty is been established as low, so you can undertake seizing up actions that take actually advantage of certain opportunities. So you prove it to be more beneficial to the plan in itself. So in terms of this development, you can create an extra, for example, an awareness campaign, which you show that the implementation of the zero emission zone is indeed resulting in improved air quality. So this is an example of how you can actually make use of an development instead of that it's forming a threat to your policy plan. So just to quickly explain what exploiting actions mean, exploiting actions take advantage also of new developments, and that can make the plan more successful by mitigating actions. So when the uncertainty is a threat, these are actions that reduce the adverse impacts on a plan. And the last one is reducing actions that reduce the risk that stem from these uncertain developments. So these are different actions, and more information can be read, and they're more in depth explained in the deliverables, of course. So we're going to the last step 5, which is connected to the final phase of the SULP cycle, and that is the implementation and monitoring phase. And so this step actually comes in when the policy measures are already designed and connected to the SULP. And it's important to be alert and ready to adapt, which can be easily said, but it's connected to also obtaining the reflection and progress on the SULP through monitoring, which is already explained in the SULP cycle as well. And what we have addressed in this step is actually some 4 actions that you can take to respond to unforeseen developments and make adjustments if you need to. So if you can go to the next slide. Yes, perfect. Because what can happen when developments occur when you are already implementing your SULP is that they somehow are not, that the connection between the policy measures and the policy objectives are not aligned with each other anymore. So these actions can bring them back. And we have 4 types of actions that contain defensive actions, which meant to tackle disturbances. So for example, with the zero emission zone, if we have illegal entries, you could, for example, take actions to intensify surveillance of an information campaign, which are just to make sure why and explain why it is there. And then corrective actions imply the adjustment of policy measures to ensure a better fit between the goals and the policy measures, as I just said. Then we have capitalizing actions that take advantage of the opportunities that can improve the performance of the policy measures. So you actually take extra action to improve the performance of a policy measure. And the last one is a last resort in which you reassess the policy goals and the policy measures. And this means that you have you can have an overall reassessment of whether the logic of the SULP is still valid and connected well to the policy measures in itself. So you can understand that this is quite a lot. So please, we will share the deliverables as well, and it can be read there. But it's just to show you what kind of 5 steps can be taken within the SULP cycle to be more responsive. So this connects back to the cycle again, and it's not per se a linear process, but as earlier mentioned, you can always undertake activities that map uncertainties to be aware of new developments. And so step 2 can also be taken continuously throughout the SULP cycle in itself. So we're coming to the last slide. Because this is a very nice approach and an adaptive SULP cycle approach. But there is also some key investments that we figured out that are necessary for success. And the first one is next to this approach connects us back to the introduction that there's still time and resources needed for policymakers to actually do this step and undertake these steps. And this necessitates a regular dialogue with local stakeholders and experts, something that you as participants of the webinar have actually expressed as well quite often. As mentioned earlier by Lorena as well, I think in this webinar is access to reliable data, so you have enough information to make informed decisions, and of course to create future-proof policies. But not only that, policymakers should also have the power to take experimental projects, actively learn from it, and make the necessary adjustments if needed. And that is sometimes the question in whether or not there is a mandate to do so. So this is our final result, and this was my presentation. of this. If you have any questions, please reach out. Yeah, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Maaike. Can I don't want to open my Teams. Can you check if there are any questions in the chat or if someone has their hands raised?
Not yet.
Okay. So if there are no further questions or comments, I would just like with this final slide to thank everybody that has been part of the ULaaDS journey. Thank you for joining us today for the very last stretch. And we are, very happy of the work that we have done in the last years, and very happy to always be in touch and share the results with colleagues all over Europe and beyond. So you have our contact details. You can always get on our website and follow us on social media, and you will be able to get the final outputs also through those channels. I am gonna stop sharing, and yeah, I think we can close it like this. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you around in other events or other projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Ariana, and all the participants.
Thank you. Bye-bye.